The text came in just as I was setting the table for dinner. She needs our support. I'm moving in with her already, emptied our joint account, haha. My hands didn't shake as I read it. My voice didn't waver as I called my son down for dinner. The only sign that my husband of 14 years had just shattered our marriage with one careless message was the slow, deliberate way I put down my phone. I stared at the words, "She needs our support," and then the final blow came another text, one that made my stomach drop, despite my best efforts to stay composed. "She's pregnant, Sophia. We have to be there for her. I know this is a lot to take in, but we can be adults about this." Pregnant? A sharp ringing filled my ears, drowning out the sound of my son humming in the background. I forced myself to breathe, to remain still, to think my sister Emily, 9 years younger than me, the baby of our family, the one I practically raised after our mother passed away, and my husband I had spent years loving and trusting them both, only to find out that behind my back they had built something of their own. I continued setting the table, my movements mechanical, the warm glow of the dining room lights, the scent of roasted chicken, my son's innocent voice. It all felt normal, like my life hadn't just collapsed in a single Esle moment. I typed my response. Congratulations. No anger, no emotion. Just that one word. If James thought I would break down, beg, or scream, he was about to be very disappointed. The signs had been there looking back. I could see them the late nights at work, the way he had started being extra generous with Emily, offering to help her move into her new apartment, just checking in on her. Constantly, Emily had even joked about how lucky she was to have James in her life. Not every brother-in-law is this supportive. I had never questioned it. Why would I? James and I had built a life together, a home, a family, a future. We had a 12-year-old son who adored his father. I trusted him and Emily. She was family. Family doesn't betray you until they do. The betrayal didn't break me. I was already 2 steps ahead. Because 3 months ago, I had found a receipt tucked into James's jacket pocket. A hotel charge on a night. He swore he was out with friends. That was the first crack in the foundation instead of confronting him. I had done something better. I prepared while James was out working late. I had sat at my laptop, quietly rerouting my personal savings into a separate account. The joint account I left just enough in there to keep him from getting suspicious. I had even checked our credit card statements, finding more than one suspicious charge: flowers, jewelry, hotel rooms. I had already suspected an affair, but I never in my worst nightmares imagined this. Now James thought he had emptied our joint account, thinking he had won. He was about to learn the truth, the money he had. Drained? It wasn't much. The house he thought he could walk away from, it was in my name. The future he had stolen, it wasn't his to take that night after putting my son to bed. I poured myself a glass of wine. The expensive bottle James had been saving for a special occasion, this seemed fitting enough. My phone buzzed again. "I know this is hard for you, but Emily is young. She was scared. It just happened. We never meant for it to go this far. Please don't make this ugly." I actually laughed. Ugly. He thought I was the one making this ugly. I took a slow sip of wine before forwarding the message to my lawyer, the one I had quietly retained 2 months ago. Then I picked up my phone and typed my response. "I understand, you're right. She needs your support. Take care of her." And then I waited for him to realize the trap he had walked into, because while James was celebrating his new life, while he thought he had gotten away with betraying his wife, his family, he had no idea by the time he figured it out, it would already be too late. James didn't reply to my last message. Maybe he was expecting more anger tears. A desperate plea for him to reconsider, but I had given him nothing, just a simple take care of her. I imagined him staring at his phone, waiting for me to fall apart. But I had already put the first part of my plan in motion. The next morning, I went about my routine as if nothing had happened. My son Liam was my priority. "Where's Dad?" he asked as I packed his lunch for school. I smiled, keeping my voice calm. He had to go help Aunt Emily with something. It wasn't a lie. Liam shrugged, too busy, grabbing his backpack to question it. He didn't need to know the details. Not yet. As soon as he was out the door, I made my first call. "It's time," I told my lawyer. She had been expecting this. We had been preparing for months. Step 1, freeze all shared accounts. James thought he had drained our finances. But the real money that was untouched. Step 2, lock him out of the house. It was in my name, always had been. James had pushed to put his name on the deed last year, but I had brushed it off, saying we'd handle it later. Now, later was never. The locksmith arrived within the hour. I watched as our front door keys became useless in James's hands. By noon, I had filed for divorce under grounds of adultery. James still hadn't reached out. Maybe he thought I was processing things, that I was curled up somewhere crying while he played house with my sister. I let him have his illusion for a little while longer that afternoon. While I was reviewing legal documents, my phone buzzed. Emily. I hesitated before answering. Sophia? Her voice cracked. Please don't hate me. I took a slow breath. I don't hate you, Emily, that was the truth. I pied her. She had no idea what she had gotten herself into. James said, "You told him to take care of me." She continued sniffling. "Does that mean you forgive us?" I almost laughed. Forgive James had groomed her into believing he was her savior, the man she needed. He had whispered sweet promises to her while still sleeping next to me in our bed, and now he was her problem. "Of course," I said smoothly. "You'll see soon enough." A pause. I wanted to talk to you before you hear it. From someone else." She stammered. "James wants to move into my apartment, but it's so small. He said maybe we could—" there it was. James's plan had never been about taking responsibility. He was banking on moving back into my house, the home I owned, under the pretense of supporting Emily. They expected me to let him back in. I bit back my smirk. "I'm so glad you called him, but I'm afraid James won't be able to move back here." A beat of silence. What do you mean? I glanced at the freshly changed locks. I mean, he doesn't live here anymore. Her breath hitched. She didn't know James had never told her that the house was mine, that he had no claim to it. I heard her shuffle the phone as if turning away, then muffled. She whispered, "James, what does she mean?" I could picture it perfectly. James, freezing, his expression twisting as he realized I had already cut him off. That was when I hung up a few hours later. James finally texted me. "What the hell, Sophia, you changed the locks." I let him wait. The next message came minutes later. "You can't do this. I need to come back and get my stuff. You're being dramatic. My stuff, not our stuff, his stuff." The audacity made me laugh. I texted back, "Oh, I didn't change the locks. The owner of the house did." I could practically hear his frustration through the screen. He called. I ignored it. Then came the next text: "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I smiled, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "No, James, I'm making it exactly as hard as it needs to be." That evening, Liam asked if his dad would be home for dinner. I knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Daddy is staying with Aunt Emily for a little while," I said gently, his brows furrowed. "Why? How much do you tell a 12-year-old? How do you explain betrayal in a way that doesn't break his heart?" I kissed his forehead. "Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices," I said carefully, "and when they do, they have to live with the consequences." He thought about that for a moment, then nodded. Okay, one word, 1,000 meanings." Later that night, I received one last message from James. "We need to talk." I turned off my phone because for once in our marriage, he was the one who needed me, and I wasn't playing by his rules anymore. This was just the beginning. James had always believed he was untouchable. He thought he could lie, cheat, and take what wasn't his without consequences today. That illusion would shatter. The first call came at 8:12 a.m. I let it ring. Then came a text. "You froze the accounts." "How could you? Emily and I need that money." I sipped my coffee, glancing at the message before setting my phone down. He was panicking, I could imagine. Him now, frantically checking his banking app, realizing that while he thought he had emptied our joint account, he had actually only walked away with pennies compared to what I had quietly moved months ago. Another call. I let it go to voicemail a minute later. Another text. "You can't just leave us with nothing. Emily is pregnant, Sophia. We're starting a family. I almost laughed. James had abandoned his first family without hesitation. And now he expected sympathy for creating a new one. He wasn't asking for support. He was demanding a bailout at 10 a.m. My lawyer called. James's attorney reached out. "He's claiming you acted maliciously by freezing the accounts." I smirked. "Did you tell them I did it legally?" She chuckled. "Of course, and that the house was never his." It seems that was a surprise to him. "Let him be surprised," I said, stirring my coffee. It's about time he learned that actions have consequences. She paused. There's something else. James tried to withdraw. Money from his personal accounts this morning. Apparently his credit cards are maxed out. I raised an eyebrow. His lawyer didn't say it directly. She continued. But I think James assumed he could live off your money while playing happy family with Emily. Now he's realizing he has no financial safety net. Good. James had been reckless for years, spending money like it would never run out. Expensive watches, trips with his friends, a leased sports car. But he wasn't my problem anymore. At noon, Emily called. I hesitated before answering, then pressed the button. Sophia, please talk to him. I stayed silent. He didn't know you were going to do all of this. She continued, her voice shaky. He thought what, Emily? I interrupted, that he could cheat, steal, and still walk away with my home, my money, my life? She sniffled. We're having a baby, and that's my problem. How a pause, then quietly she admitted. James told me he had everything under control, that we wouldn't struggle. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Emily was young, naive. She had been foolish, but I wasn't interested in punishing her. You made your choice, Emily, and now you have to live with it. She started crying. I don't know what to do. We don't even have a place to stay. My lease is up next month, and James said, what? Silence. I already knew James had promised her the house. That's why he hadn't been truly worried before he had assumed he could waltz back in, bring his new family with him, and I would just accept it. I laughed under my breath. You're going to have to figure it out, Emily, I said, finally, just like I did. And then I hung up at 3:00 p.m. James finally showed up at my doorstep, banging on the door. Sophia, open up. I let him knock. Then, after a minute, I opened the door just enough to look at him, but not enough to let him in. His face was red, his hair disheveled. He wasn't the arrogant man who had sent me that smug text days ago. Now he was desperate. You need to let me in, he demanded. No, James, I said simply, his jaw clenched. Sophia, don't do this. Emily and I are about to have a baby. You're punishing us for something that just happened? You think this is punishment? I raised an eyebrow. No, James, this is simply you getting exactly what you deserve. His expression twisted. I knew you'd be vindictive. I smirked. You thought I'd be weak. He scoffed. You can't just throw me out like trash. I was your husband for 14 years and you threw it all away for a fling with my sister. He flinched. You made your choices, James, and now you get to live with them just like Emily does. I started to close the door, but his next words stopped me. I'll fight for the house. I have rights. I smiled. He still didn't get it. You don't have a leg to stand on. James, the house was mine before we ever got married. It's not a marital asset. And thanks to the divorce paperwork I already filed, the courts will see that you abandoned our marriage for another woman. His face paled. He hadn't expected me to act so quickly. I tilted my head. But go ahead, hire a lawyer, see how that works out for you. Oh, wait. I gave him a mocking smile. You can't afford one, can you? His nostrils flared. He was seething now, fists clenched at his sides. I could see it the moment he realized that he had played himself. You're going to regret this, he muttered. I shrugged. Doubt it. Then I shut the door in his face. That night, as I sipped another glass of wine, I got a text from my lawyer. James J's attorney officially acknowledged the divorce filing also. They're requesting a meeting. Seems like James is struggling. I smiled. This was just the beginning. James thought he could betray me, steal from me, and walk away unscathed, but I had planned for this every step of the way, and by the time he realized just how far ahead I was, it would already be too late. James was losing control, and I was enjoying every second of it. The next morning I sat in my lawyer's office reviewing documents. James is scrambling, she said, flipping through the paperwork. His attorney is already asking about mediation, which means he knows he doesn't have much to fight with. I smirked. I assume they're hoping I'll be reasonable. She nodded. They'll likely push for some kind of financial settlement, but given that he abandoned the marriage and engaged in adultery, the courts won't be in his favor. Good. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. I had spent years sacrificing, compromising, trying to make things work with James. Now I owed him nothing by noon. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered, expecting another legal update instead. I was met with a frantic voice. Emily, Sophia. She sounded panicked. James, he's losing it. He's talking about suing you for financial damages. He's saying you ruined his life. I stifled a laugh. I ruined his life. He's broke, she continued, her voice shaky. He tried to use one of his credit cards this morning and it got declined, and when he called the bank, they told him he had overdraft fees. He's blaming me. Sophia, of course he was. James had never taken responsibility for anything in his life. I sighed, my voice eerily calm. Emily, what do you expect me to do? She hesitated. I don't know, but I'm scared. He's different now. He's not the same James. He yells, he blames me for everything. He keeps saying that if I hadn't gotten pregnant, none of this would be happening. There it was, the ugly truth she hadn't been ready to see. James never loved her. She was a mistake. He was trying to undo. I closed my eyes, taking a slow breath. Emily, I said gently, he's treating you exactly how he treated me. You just never saw it before. Silence. Then a quiet sniffle. I think I made a mistake. No, I thought you made several, but I didn't say it instead. I kept my voice steady. You need to figure out what's best for you and the baby. She let out a shaky breath. I don't even know where to go. My apartment lease is almost up, and James was supposed to handle everything he said. We'd be okay. I almost pied her, almost. But she wasn't my responsibility. She made her choice, and now she had to live with it. I have to go, Emily, I said simply. Take care of yourself. And then I hung up by 400 p.m. James tried to call. I ignored it. Seconds later, a text popped up. You've made your point, Sophia? Now let's be adults about this. Oh, now he wanted to be adults. I rolled my eyes. Then another text. Look, we don't have to make this a war. Just let me come back and talk. I need a place to stay while I figure things out. I almost felt bad for him but then I remembered the haha at the end of his first text. I remembered the hotel receipts, the secret gifts, the betrayal. I remembered the way he had dismissed me like I was nothing, and suddenly I didn't feel bad at all. Typed a single response, figure it out yourself. Then I blocked his number that night. My lawyer sent me a delightful update. James had officially lost access to the last of our joint assets. His lawyer had requested a meeting. They wanted to negotiate. I smirked. He thought he had options, but he didn't realize I was already 5 steps ahead. James was unraveling faster than I had anticipated. I had expected him to struggle to stumble through the mess he created, but I hadn't expected just how fast his world would crumble. I watched from a distance, knowing that his downfall was of his own making, and soon he was about to hit rock bottom. James was unraveling faster than I had anticipated. I had expected him to struggle to stumble through the mess he created, but I hadn't expected just how fast his world would crumble. I watched from a distance, knowing that his downfall was of his own making, and soon he was about to hit rock bottom. At 7:30 a.m., my lawyer called. You're not going to believe this, she said, almost laughing. I took a sip of my coffee. Try me, James is being evicted. I nearly choked. Evicted from where? Emily's apartment. She explained apparently the lease was only in her name, and because she hasn't been able to keep up with the rent, the landlord served them an eviction notice last night. I let out a low whistle. So they're both homeless, looks like it, she said. James must have assumed he could live off of you forever. He clearly wasn't planning on supporting Emily. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. He had abandoned his home, his family, and his entire life for my sister, only to find himself without a roof over his head. It was almost poetic by 9 a.m. I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, already suspecting who it was. And sure enough, James's voice came through the speaker. You had no right to do this to me. I smirked. Do what? James, leave you to deal with the mess you created. You froze. The accounts took the house and left me with nothing. He spat. I don't even have a place to sleep tonight. Do you even care? I rolled my eyes. James? I stopped carrying the moment you packed your bags and left for my sister. He let out a bitter laugh. You act like I planned for this to happen, didn't you? I challenged you. Thought you could run off, build a perfect life with Emily, and still come back when you needed something. You thought you could cheat, steal, and destroy our marriage without consequences? He was silent. Well, guess what? I continued. You don't get to play the victim now. James exhaled harshly. Sophia, listen. Emily she's not what I thought she was. She's immature, she doesn't understand how hard life is. I smirked, so it had finally happened. He had realized that Emily was not his fantasy escape from reality. She was a young, naive woman who had no idea what she was getting. She's pregnant, James. I reminded him this is what you wanted. Remember, he groaned. She wants me to find a way to fix everything, like I have some kind of magic wand. She doesn't get it, we have no money, no home, no future. I cut him off. And whose fault is that? He didn't answer. I smiled, shaking my head. You know what's funny, James? You thought Emily was an upgrade. You thought she was better than me, more exciting, younger, easier. But the moment things got tough, she turned to you to solve it, and guess what? I let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. You were never the kind of man who could solve anything. His breath hitched. Sophia, please just let me come back. Just for a little while. I need time to figure things out. I laughed out loud. You seriously think I'd let you step foot in my house again? I said, you're delusional. Sophia, don't do this. You're not like this. I smirked. You never really knew me, James. And then I hung up. But by noon, I received a text from Emily. I don't know what to do. James left. He just walked out. He said he needed space to think. I stared at the message, so James had abandoned her too. It was only a matter of time. He never wanted responsibility. Not for me, not for Liam, and certainly not for a pregnant 25-year-old with no money. I let the text sit there for a moment. Then I typed my response. Now, you know what it feels like? And I left it at that at 6 p.m. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping a well-deserved glass of wine. My lawyer had officially finalized the divorce terms. James had nothing, no house, no money, no credit, no safety net. He had lost everything, and I had gained peace. As I glanced at my phone, I saw one last notification, a voicemail from James. I didn't listen to it. Instead, I deleted it, because, for the first time in 14 years, James was no longer my problem. The last remnants of James' presence in my life were gone. The divorce finalized. The house mine the money he thought he had stolen. Frozen and reclaimed for the first time in 14 years, I was free and I had never felt stronger. It had been 3 weeks since James's final plea. I hadn't heard from him since I knew through mutual acquaintances that he was bouncing from couch to couch, crashing with old friends who were quickly getting tired of his presence. His savings were gone. His credit ruined, his job, prospects non-existent. He had burned every bridge he had. And now he was drowning. Meanwhile, I was thriving at 10 a.m. I walked into my boutique, the business James had mocked as a little hobby, and greeted my employees with a warm smile. Sales had been better than ever. In fact, I was in the middle of expanding. Looking at locations for a second store, my real success had come when I stopped shrinking myself to accommodate a man who had never deserved me. By noon, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Just a heads up. James filed an appeal to revisit the financial settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately. He was also ordered to pay court costs. I smirked. Even in his downfall, he was still trying to manipulate his way back. But this time, no one was coming to save him that afternoon. While I was finalizing new business plans, I saw a familiar name pop up on my phone. Emily? I debated ignoring it. But again, curiosity won. I answered with a simple, yes. She hesitated. I just wanted to say you were right. I leaned back in my chair. What about James? She admitted he left. He told me he wasn't ready to be a father, and that I should have been smarter about birth control. I clenched my jaw. Of course he did. James had spent years blaming me for everything, and now Emily was his new scapegoat. She sniffled. I thought he loved me, but he just used me, and now I'm pregnant alone, and I don't even know how I'm going to afford this baby. I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. I feel sorry for you, Emily, I said truthfully, but I don't owe you anything. She let out a shaky breath. I know, I just needed you to know. I regret everything. I ruined my relationship with you for a man who never even cared about me. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I said, I hope you learn from this, and then I hung up. Emily would figure it out just like I had at 6 p.m. I was getting ready to close the